What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with some Detroit Lions news. That's right, we're back with an episode of Lions Latest, going through the latest Detroit Lions news. And today, we are here with a couple of signings to discuss for the Detroit Lions. So let's get it started. Welcome everybody to a video. Glad you guys are here and we are back, man. And yes, man, we're back with some Lions news. Now, I was planning on having my next video be the Sam Laporta video, but I'm still working on that in the background. And today, some news dropped for the Lions as two players that they had brought in for tryouts this past, weekend for rookie minicamp have officially signed as undrafted free agents for the Detroit Lions. Now, let me pause here and clarify. One player actually signed who's not an undrafted free agent this year. He's already technically been in the league. And the other player is a straight rookie. So that is an undrafted free agent now signing for the Lions. So one was a tryout, one was a rookie tryout during rookie minicamp. But they both tried out for the Lions, and they both are now getting signed. They'll just likely be on different deals because one is UDFA, which is 3 years. I'm assuming the other one is not a 3-year deal. We'll see where that goes, but that's some awesome news. And one of them is a position that we talked a lot about before the draft. I say a lot, but it's a position that usually doesn't get a lot of talk, but it definitely should. That was talked about before the draft, and then, of course, another one as well, which, we didn't go heavy on in the draft either, that also signed today. So we're going to dive into those two and also just hit on a couple quick notes, but this video is going to be shorter than the other long videos that we put out over here, because, again, the Sam Laporta video is definitely going to take some time. So let's just dive right into it. Let's start with the kicker first, and then we'll dive into the other position because I have more notes on those players. It's not a completely full breakdown as I plan to do that with every player, but just kind of a quick little overview here. So we'll start off at the kicker position first with John Parker Romo. That's right, the Lions have signed a kicker to a UDFA deal, which are 3-year deals. The Lions have signed a kicker though. Now I could give you his height and his weight, but does it really matter? I mean, it's a kicker. He's 5'11", 175. Actually, those aren't like his official, testing numbers. I don't actually know. I didn't actually look that up, to be honest with you, because it's a kicker, but is definitely a player with a ton of experience going back to 2016 at the college level, starting with Central Arkansas. 25% of his punts were inside the 20, so I'd say that's a pretty good percentage. It was 2021, his third year with Virginia Tech, that he got an opportunity to be the guy, the super senior as a kicker. And statistically speaking, for guys coming out of college, a lot of times we see some, wild numbers and are kind of all over the place, but some guys maybe they just have a big leg and it's like, I'll take a shot on him. This guy was pretty darn efficient in college. 18 of 22 on field goals in his final season, 34 of 34 on extra points, including 7 of 9 on 40-plus yard field goal attempts that season. And again, he also kicked off that year as well. He had a 52-yard field goal that season. And Antonio Brahmas, and he got an opportunity to kind of be the guy there. And again, statistically speaking, he did extremely well. 7 of 19 on field goals, 7 of 7 between 40 and 49 yards. That's awesome. And 2 for 3 on 50-plus yard field goal attempts, including a 57-yard field goal in Seattle Seahawks Stadium, which is actually, I believe, the career long in that stadium. And that means it's not even an NFL kicker that has that record. So that's really impressive. We know that's an outdoor stadium, but that means he was kicking basically 90%. from what I've heard is that a lot of the media didn't actually get to see him take kicks. So this kind of stuff that was all, behind closed doors seemingly, and they liked him there and they were like, hey, let's sign this guy on. So we'll see how that battle goes. Also, the Detroit Lions reportedly have signed a receiver from Eastern Michigan. He's originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and this is Dylan Drummond out of Eastern Michigan. Now, this past season, statistically, it wasn't like, mind-blowing. 33 receptions, 525 yards, 3 touchdowns in 10 games played. But what does stand out there statistically is when you look at the yards to the receptions. He averaged basically 16 yards per reception this past year with Eastern Michigan. Now, over his career, he's been very productive, over 2,000 yards in his 5 seasons. 2020, he only played in 3 games, so there wasn't much production there. But I think a big thing that stands out when you watch this player, from what I've seen so far of Dylan, is the returning background. He's a former punt returner and kick returner, and I think it shows up. I wasn't really anticipating that. You look at some of his measurables, he's listed in at just over 6 foot. 33-inch vertical, which is fine. A 4.62 40. This was all at a pro day. And then his 10-yard split wasn't great either. I believe it was a 1.67. His 20-yard split was actually much better. And then also what stood out, though, with his testing numbers was the 6.86 3-cone drill, which was actually a really good score. So that was the one area he had a really good score, and I think that does show up when you watch him. This past season, he had 5 punt returns for 45 yards, but he also does have a pretty big kick return background as well. He could compete for that position, but I do think it shows up in his play style. You'll see them throw him a pretty good amount of screens, and then you'll see him create a little bit after the catch. It doesn't end immediately for him. There seems to be some creativity as a yard after catch type of player. So that was one thing that stuck out to me that I wasn't expecting, especially when you look at his numbers and kind of his build, but it's something that does show up in a positive way when you watch him. So what I've seen so far about this player, there was a couple things that stood out. That was one of them, and then there was also his hands and his receiving ability, specifically some of the ball tracking. I thought he had plus ball tracking ability downfield. It looked very comfortable. He did a really good job pacing himself. Finisher downfield that had some plucks when you watched him, like catching the ball away from his body. He didn't get a lot of passes that got into his body, so I like that as well from a receiver, making yourself kind of that big target. And when you kind of look at his route tree, it wasn't the most diverse, but you did see a handful of dig routes that were thrown in there. Again, a couple of screen routes as well. My biggest thing here was he looked like a very smart receiver. I mean, the biggest thing there. Now, he was a competitor as well. I think it really showed up against Kent State. You saw some of the battle that he had as a blocker. Even on the call that they had as holding, you saw him finish the block. He showed as a much more competitive blocker. I thought his, technique wasn't the best, but when you start to see games like that, you start to see the competitor brought out of him, you really start to like it. But then again, the separation part of it was the football intelligence as a route runner. It was understanding where the chains were. It was feeling where I had to get to with this route, when to break it off, getting proper route depth, while at the same time being able to plant and get very flat, get a straight line while still attacking the football, not, that was a huge thing for me, was kind of the understanding of where you had to get to, consistently got to the right spot. And again, it's kind of like, those players on those kind of routes you're looking for, hey, get us the first down. You're just looking for people to move the chains. So that was something as a guy that played both in the slot and on the outside. definitely could help him on some of the, level one passes. So potentially could be a little bit of a bigger slot. On the outside, which is going to hurt him, is that he doesn't have some of that threatening deep speed over top. He also doesn't have the longest arms either. He's not a crazy athlete at the catch point, but I thought he did a pretty nice job of being able to, against certain matchups, get at least a step. He wasn't stacking cornerbacks, but he could find a way to get a step through kind of that 10 to 20 yard range after beating the press and working through the stem. Breadbasket passes. I didn't think he was the most fluid or even shifty with the ball in his hands. And again, talking about the yak, while I think, you saw him create a little bit after the catch there, it wasn't like he was a home run threat. A lot of things kind of died out. But he did a pretty good job, I would say a good job of making the first defender miss more often than not. Feel for space with ball in his hands, leading to some contact balance and some proactive early sinks into his cuts, but not as much of the shiftiness and the home run speed. Mini camp practice. That's Brian Branch. Broderick Martin is no longer wearing his arm sleeve, as he had a minor arm injury that popped up on Saturday as well. Big V, according to the photos, was on the field, so he may be actually in a really good spot in terms of where he's healing, which would be great. He had a really good 2021. It'd be awesome to get him back after missing 2022. And then you have still no Jahmyr Gibbs. That was, I think it was talked about by Ray Agnew, who said it wasn't necessarily something that's serious there. He had a tweaked ankle, which happened on Friday, but it didn't look like Jahmyr Gibbs was maybe out there on Monday. But we'll keep an eye out for updates like that. I'm not really concerned about any of these, but just kind of to fly through them here. Nothing seems to be super serious with this. And then finally, they also updated some of the joint practice announcements. Giants, we're going to have joint practices there, it sounds like, according to Dan Campbell. Now it sounds like, according to Doug Peterson, we're also going to have joint practices with the Jacksonville Jaguars, who we play in the preseason.